I could
at work.
watch the telly, or I could read. At work, or somebody else to make me a cup of coffee or reach down what I want, but I could run my school.
Yeah.
Which would you choose?
Yeah.
Because daytime telly doesn't do it for me.
Really? I'm sure some of it's lovely.
4 months later, the consultant said, we'll talk about you going back to school a couple of hours a week. I just laughed.
Oh, wow.
So my strong suit, which has been at many, many levels my salvation.
Yes.
Also, if you allow it to take over to the point of being stupid about it, which on occasions I have been, it can be detrimental. And we've all got strong suits. Mine happens to be fairly extreme, and I have learned to deal with it. But it just gives people a feel for that.
It's absolutely, and it's awareness that's half the battle, isn't it? Once you're aware of it, and it kind of slaps you in the
if you're
face
not
like
aware,
a fish. Yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I do that, don't I? And everyone around you goes, yes, you do. you can't see it for yourself.
To International Women's Day, I think one of the really common strong suits, and we may have more than one, that women, and I'm generalising, but I think they do it as an art form, is we put everybody else first. Yep. We try and be superwoman.
Yep.
And very often that hides an insecurity that I'm going to be found out for being a fraud.
Yep.
Or I've got to do everything perfectly because otherwise people will know that I'm no good, and they have a poor sense of self-worth. And that strong suit actually in many ways helps them achieve, but at the same time it adds to burnout, to stress, to creating a situation where your kids don't help and your partner doesn't help because you need it done your way, because at least then you know it's done.
Yeah, I was that woman. Yeah, hands up.
And I think it's a really common pattern, and it starts for all, for very good reason, but actually it's destructive.
I know whilst it's internet, I agree, totally agree with what you just said, because I've been in that space as well when it's like, oh, for goodness sake, I'll do it, and you kind of make a martyr of yourself. But going back to International Women's Day, I think for me, gender is on a spectrum. Mm-hmm. So we all have feminine traits and masculine traits. And I know men who have gone through that imposter syndrome.
Absolutely. It is not unique. Yeah. I just think because of the role women have had,
society has led us down that road, hasn't it? Absolutely.
And if you think, when I was a child, very, very few women went out to work if they had a family. In fact, if you were a teacher, you had to give up your teaching job.
Oh, isn't that terrible? It's not that long ago, is it? In reality, kids today don't realise it. And in the 70s, you couldn't have your own credit card, could you? Was that in the UK or was that just America?
Your husband had to sign for you to have a credit card.
Bonkers. And it's in our lifetime. Crazy.
But women have taken on the work, but they've not let other things go. So they're trying to do it all.
Yes.
And I think whilst I absolutely accept that men also, you'll find plenty of men who are overwhelmed and who are trying to do it all and all of that. As a generality, I think that women have been put into a particularly challenging period of history.
Yes.
Where you're trying to be the best mum in the world, the best partner in the world, and work and everything else. And it's really challenging.
I mean, there's that famous quote around probably in the 80s, in order to beat men at their own game, women have to be twice as good at this and this and this. Unfortunately, this isn't difficult. And it's like, on the one hand, you're like, yeah, women are great, fantastic. On the other hand, it's like, we're dividing ourselves. We're saying them and us, and it isn't them and us. We're all in it together.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, go on.
I'm very excited about this because I think in many ways women's lib has done us a disservice, because I think that there were lots that needed to happen, but the disservice bit is that many women believe they have to behave like less hairy men.
Yes.
And actually, when both men and women have got masculine and feminine energy, and they are different.
Yeah.
The masculine energy, very logical, problem solving and so on.
Yep.
Feminine energy, creative, and we want to bring the best out of both energies in men and women. And for me, I think one of the challenges that we have as people, not men, or do you know there's 50 different categories of gender these days, which I read that last week.
Wow.
We won't go there.
That's for another podcast.
But if you're stepping into your genuine power, and we were talking about this before we actually started recording, stepping into your genuine power means that you are the best version of you, but that doesn't mean that you have power and dominion over somebody else.
No,
exactly. Your power stands alone, and actually it encourages other people to step into the light and to be their powerful selves. And you look for how do we use our time, our skills, our expertise in the best possible way for the good of everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And that for me is just so important.
I do think that, as you say, it's a time in history, isn't it, when women's lib, feminism, it seems, it went through a phase of being a dirty word. All of these things had to be as extreme as they were in order to achieve exactly. And it's the same as you look back at the suffragette movement and you think, oh, some of those women, planting bombs and setting fire to things, and they were breaking the law and it was terrible, but they were desperate and we had to do something. So I don't condone that, but at the same time I can understand it. And what they went through, being force-fed every time they were arrested, and all those kind of things that happened, you kind of have to acknowledge that extremist behaviour sometimes has a place, providing, in my book, you're not actually harming other people. It's just, if you want to march or, demonstrate or do something, providing you're not harming anybody else, you've got to get your voice heard in any which way you can. And I know that over the years, probably looking back, it's a bit like the language we used amongst races, and people say if you look at the 70s everybody was racist. Well, I tell you, they probably still are now to a certain extent, but you kind of look back at those times and they were of its time. So having to go through,
condone it, does it?
No, it doesn't condone it at all, but it's brought us to where we are today, and now we have to take that position that we have and build on it, but in a more positive, empowering way, without taking power away from anybody else. As you say, I think that is a really valuable way of looking at things. So many times men and women feel like they have to top one over on the other, and it isn't. We're on this planet together. We've got to survive together. We've got to stop damaging each other and the planet, and if we're going to keep thinking of them and us, right and wrong, you or me, male and female, just polarizing everything.
And it's interesting how many people feel that they have to fight to be right.
Yes.
I think being right's highly overrated.
Oh my goodness, yeah, absolutely.
I think there are times, so if I've got a brain surgeon,
I want him to be right.
If I've got a pilot flying the plane, there is a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, I'd like it to be a woman though. No, I'm not.
But for the most part, when people get into the argy-bargy of making a stand, it's because they feel the need to be seen to be right. And I believe it says much more about their sense of self-esteem than it does about the argument itself.
Yeah.
And so I would say, choose your battles, only when it really actually makes a difference, when it's really important. Fight that battle rather than fighting every battle. And it's perfectly acceptable to say, it's your opinion. I value your opinion, but it ain't mine.
Yeah, I mean, Erkan and I, people say, oh, how do you two get on? And Jill, how do you put up with him? And I'm sure people say to him, how do you put up with Jill? But the amount of times we go, let's agree to disagree. Okay. There's no animosity, no angst or upset. We don't live in that space of being upset with each other. It is just like, I can see where you're coming from, but it doesn't feel right for me. So I'm going to, okay, that's fine. You do it your way and I'll do it my way. Great. And we just carry on. Sometimes
the way forward is not to use, person A or person's B way, but to say, okay, let's find a third way, which actually is neither of our ways, but one that will work.
Solution.
and look for a win-win solution.
Yeah, and that's kind of the epitome of BeCollaboration, because we've always said our definition is collaboration is when 3 or more people get together, and it is a solution-focused environment. So rather go, here's the problem, let's solve it. It's like, well, what other things could come out of this? Let's discover, and you're all looking at it from your own perspective and your own specialism and your own personal history. And some amazing things have come out as a result of the work that people do together.
How often have you been in a situation where people have been sitting down, brainstorming or thought showering or whatever drives me up the wall, but and people have come up with silly ideas that have then triggered an idea that's triggered the idea that works.
Yes, I love that.
And would not have happened unless somebody had talked about something that was so far removed in terms of the ordinary or what we were looking at. But it's triggered that way of thinking. And if you look at organisations like Google and Apple and so on, they've harnessed that.
Yes.
They've recognised that to be creative, people have got to feel safe to think outside the box and to actually silly, really, in order to move things forward. And that, for me, brings us back to the difference between childish and childlike.
Yes.
When you're childlike, you're curious. Very small children don't see the world. Am I going to get it wrong, or does my bum look big in my nappy? They just want to go ahead, don't they? And they'll try things, and if it doesn't work, well, they try it again a different way until it does. And we lose that, I think, and I think it's a huge shame.
We can blame all sorts of reasons for losing it, but it does kind of point to the education system of, when you're in a class at the age of 4, which breaks my heart, and you're sat at a desk and you have to do things at a certain time and go at a certain place and hit a certain target at 4. It's just, that's why, you and I both have teaching backgrounds, so, it kind of is no surprise that we kind of hit a ceiling, I think, and thought, well, there must be an easier way to share what we want to share without the restrictions of the
my sadness is I thought it was the best job in the world, but I'm very pleased to be out of it now.
It's sad, isn't it?
And I think the joy of learning, which is a lifelong thing, the curiosity, you can get high standards without making it so linear and so narrow and stilted.
Can't keep ticking boxes all the time.
And I don't think it's any surprise that, a third of young people now are talking about being stressed, many of them on antidepressants, which the doctors know don't work. I think there is so much going on that needs to be dealt with.
It's tragic. So tell us your now we've just touched upon your past in the teaching environment. Just bring us up to speed. How did you get to where you are now?
Right. I started teaching and I was very quickly promoted to be a deputy head of a large primary school. It was 1982. And when I went to the school, the head said to me, we don't want you, we want a man. Because we need somebody to do football.
Really? That narrow-minded? Oh, wow.
So anyway, I was given an interview, and on the day of the interview, we don't want you, and if there is a man your equal, he will get it. Anyway, I got the job, and I was promoted to be the catalyst for change, because the school, I was the youngest bar 2 on the staff. I was 28, and I was the youngest bar 2.
Wow.
And between September and February, we worked very hard on identifying and planning the way forward. Went off skiing in the February half term. Very pleased to be going off. I love skiing. And I'd had a new pair of skis for Christmas. And in those days, the fashion was to have longer skis. Right. So the man in the shop had convinced me to have an extra 10 centimetres, which I then proceeded to wrap around my neck on several occasions during the week because I kept on crossing my skis and falling over. On the Thursday, I had a really bad fall, and I said to the people I was skiing with, I'm going to go off tomorrow morning. I'm just going to poddle about, get my confidence back. I'll meet you for lunch. And they said, we've found a fabulous new run. Come with us. So we went off on the chairlift. It was one of those beautiful days, bright sunshine. The mountains looked magnificent. And